There are a ton of exciting changes coming to the healers in this week's PTR cycle, so that's what we're going to talk about today so I can keep you updated on all the changes coming in the PTR. Let's go in alphabetical order and let's start off with Druid, which only has one change. However, it is such an exciting change. They came into last week having kind of retuned their mastery and how it scales. They're now tweaking that number a bit and they've flat buffed it by 12%. So very nice that they're at least aware of that. It felt very it felt like it fell off very quickly, and now they're adjusting that slider. I love this because I do think the previous change was a step in the right direction, but it was very clear that the slider, the dial needed to be adjusted a bit, and now they are doing that. So very much welcome change. Speaking of welcome changes, let's go ahead and already hop into Preservation Evoker, who has some incredible changes. Some things that have been long-standing concerns from the player base are finally getting quality of life updates, and then also some things about their tier set that the player base kind of noticed right away. So let's go and talk about the tier set that is and how it's changing for Preservation Evoker. They are adding the ability for your echoed verdant embraces to apply your insurance, because your tier set applies insurance when you verdant embrace. Now this only makes sense because when you verdant embrace with echoes out, other things that apply from verdant embrace, like lifeline for example, do apply to the echoed targets. However, the tier set wasn't working or wasn't applying insurance, so it just makes sense that they can do this, which is excellent, not just from making sense standpoint, but also from a gameplay standpoint. In Raid, they're doing these massive ramps with resonant spheres and applying echoes to as many people as they can, and then verdant embracing to lifeline, doing this massive ramp, and now it only gets bigger and it just amplifies what they're already doing in such a good way. However, they are scaling back the healing that insurance is going to do overall for this spec, because they're going to get a ton of insurance buffs now compared to what they were getting before. It only makes sense. And speaking of only making sense, Emerald Blossom is no longer going to be echoed, which is amazing. I can't tell you how many times I used my free Essence Burst to summon an Emerald Blossom, and then I would like echo the tank with a plan for that echo. Like I was planning to like verdant embrace myself to heal both me and the tank or something. But in the meantime, as I'm echoing the tank, that Emerald Blossom pops and it just wastes that echo. Gone are those days, because they are getting rid of that interaction, which is actually a buff. I know it's weird. They're removing an interaction between two healing spells, and it's actually a buff. That's how weird Preservation's kit is, but I love this change. It's going to remove so many pain points and just open the doors up for how many different builds you can do as a Preservation Evoker. Pretty exciting. And then they've also just updated the Echo Toolkit to make it make sense. Moving on, we are already in the Monk section, which Monk is getting some good changes, I'll say it. So for starters, they're buffing Spinning Crane Kick's damage up by 40% instead of 30% coming from live into the PTR cycle. This is good that they're adjusting the slider, because Spinning Crane Kick's damage has been lackluster for a while. However, a big but, there are concerns of us becoming spin bots again. I say us Mistweavers becoming spin bots again. I don't think anyone wants that, Blizzard included. I do just think that since they're buffing or changing how Blackout Kick is doing its damage and changing a lot of our damage numbers around, they're just adjusting the slider on Spinning Crane Kick to bring it into 2025, if I had to guess. And currently, the target count for Spinning Crane Kick to become more effective for damage in specific, on PTR I was testing and it seems like it's at like 5 targets now you're going to spin again, which I don't think anyone wants. I don't think people want it to be that low, because that does bring it into the rotation quite a bit. Maybe if they dial this number back, or even better, dial the Blackout Kick damage, the Rising Sun Kick damage up a bit more. That way we're not spin bots again. I think everyone wants to avoid that, including Blizzard. So hopefully they keep an eye on this number, keep an eye on what Mistweavers are doing in Mythic Plus on the PTR, and don't let us become spin bots again. Please, I beg, no one wants that. Anyways, moving on. they did readjust Jade Bond. They basically completely reworked Jade Bond last week, and there are some growing pains with that. Some of them being that your enveloping mist spawned by your Jade Bond when those Chi Cocoons pop. We're canceling your Celestial Conduit, the healing from it, because whenever you cast a healing spell while you're channeling Celestial Conduit, it'll cancel, which obviously is just an unintended interaction. So very good. However, I do want to point out that Misty Peaks was also canceling that. And I also want to point out that Misty Peaks is also canceling Peer into Peace sometimes. So hopefully now their eyes are open to how weird Misty Peaks is behaving, and hopefully they can get that fixed as well. But this is very good. I like that they're just taking note on what is breaking when they introduce new interactions and fixing them in a timely manner. That is great. Shout out to the Mistweaver devs. And speaking of unintended interactions, this one's actually currently on live. I can do this in live if I wanted to, but while you're channeling your Manatee, you could just cast an Enveloping Mist for free sometimes, like instant cast, not have to sit there and channel it or cast it. That's obviously unintentional, and they're just removing that interaction. Very nice. Conduit of Celestials is getting even more love. It got a huge damage buff last week, and now it's getting even more of a damage buff because Master of Harmony is the damage hero talent in current live WoW. They're just trying to bring Conduit back into that discussion. Hopefully they do the same for Master of Harmony and how much healing it can do, like maybe amplify the healing aspect of Master of Harmony a little bit, no pun intended. That way you can kind of like balance the balancing beam a bit. But Celestial Conduit damage increase, I am so excited to try this out and just crank big pulsing damage, see how much damage you can do. Also, August Dynasty is another great talent on the Conduit of Celestials tree. It no longer has an ICD, which is excellent because both J-Fire Stomp and Rising Sun Kick can reset. Like if you Blackout Kick or just cast any spell, you can reset either of those. So the fact that this had an ICD just didn't make sense. Now it does. Now you can J-Fire Stomp, Thunder Focus Tea, Rising Sun Kick, J-Fire Stomp with the reset, Rising Sun Kick again, and all of that's going to be amplified. Very nice change there. Master of Harmony is seeing a change. It's a nerf though. It's a nerf to Overwhelming Force. This was adjusting your damage numbers a bit. And what I mean by that is when you're thinking of the discussion, should I be spinning crane kicking here or should I be single target rotationing here? Overwhelming Force was changing that math a bit, and especially now that they've like tweaked the numbers of Blackout Kick, it was just changing it a little bit too much. I'm guessing that's why they're changing Overwhelming Force's number, but they are tuning that down. Once again, I think all of this is kind of to bring Spinning Crane Kick back into the mix. Hopefully it isn't just the mix. Hopefully there is a discussion still or a certain target count that is fun for us players to hit to Spinning Crane Kick, and that's satisfying. I hope it's not just like 4 or 5 targets we're spinning. But Overwhelming Force was changing that math, so hopefully they keep another eye on this damage number and think like, okay, was nerfing it down to 5% too much? You know, adjust that there, but I can't complain here. Overwhelming Force being at 15% when they have tweaked our damage numbers since Overwhelming Force has been implemented into the game. It does make sense. It's about time. I just think this is pretty heavy-handed all at once, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world for Mistweavers at all. I don't think these are nerfs. I think obviously these are all buffs, except for the Master of Harmony change. Hopefully they keep an eye on it though. Moving on though, let's talk about Holy Paladin. Now Holy Paladin is seeing a concerning lack of changes. All that they're seeing changed is Herald of the Sun. They fixed an issue that was causing your second Sunrise to sometimes decrease the healing of your Holy Shocks, which is just, once again, not only are they just fixing an issue instead of like tweaking a number, it's fixing an issue that was gutting your Holy Shock healing, which just makes me think that they're trying to bring these guys back even further away from Avenging Crusader Lightsmith and into the Herald of the Sun Holy Shock spammy playstyle, which I don't know. Some people love it, some people hate it. I know that Holy Paladin, a lot of people were happy with its tuning in Season 1, myself included, so a little head scratchy, but I'm sure they're cooking up something sweet for Holy Paladins. They always get like cool reworks. Speaking of cool reworks, oh my lord. Okay, Discipline Priest has seen so many changes coming into last week's PTR. They had cooldowns removed. They had like numbers adjusted. They had effects added to something like Evangelism. now they're seeing even more redesigns to their cooldown structure. So Void Summoner has been redesigned. Instead of allowing your smites, your mind blast, your penances, all these things to reduce the cooldown of your Shadow Fiend or your Mind Bender, it's now just gonna cut the cooldown in half. So it's basically gonna act like they're going from, in Mistweaver terms, they're going from Jade Bond to Gift of the Celestials. So now instead of having this variable haste dependent cooldown, it's going to be just depending on which talent you choose, which is going to eliminate a lot of the variability or the strength at the high end, but it's going to open. I think it's a good, healthy, long-term change, if I'm being honest. I was a little, defiant when they first announced the changes to Jade Bond, but having played it, I actually am very open to it. And I'm enjoying the changes to Jade Bond. I think Disc Priests are going to end up in the long run enjoying this as well. But I am so excited to hear what you guys have to say about these Disc Priest changes, because man, you guys are getting a ton of changes, a lot of things to consider, and a lot of moving parts. We're going to have to see how it all settles down. Anyways, I think this change to Void Summoner is honestly a positive one, even if it might be a nerf given enough haste and maybe a buff given a low enough haste number, I guess. But now priests may now move slowly during Ultimate Penance's channel, and they can control where they land. Oh man, I might swap to Disc Priest. Holy hell, that is such an awesome change. Ultimate Penitence is my favorite button in the entire game. You just penance a bunch of things. You get so much damage, so much healing. It's so sick. But 5 times out of 6, you're going to land in a swirly. You're just going to be taking avoidable damage, but you can't avoid it because you're locked into this channel. It was so sad going from testing it, being like, wow, this is so cool. And then the more you play with it, you're like, this is getting me killed a lot. Hopefully this stops that, because, oh my God, Ultimate Penitence is so awesome. Okay, Evangelism's healing is increased by 40%. This does not have anything to do with extending how Evangelism extends atonements. This is just how they added a pop heal to Evangelism now when they removed Rapture. So maybe that number was just too low and they just want it to be a bit higher. I like this. I like that they're tweaking that number of the new stuff. It's going to make it more exciting. Now, a lot of changes to their dot and some interactions that just haven't really seemed like it was seeing a lot of play recently. But Pain and Suffering is now going to increase the duration of Shadow Word Pain by 2 seconds per talent point invested. So it's just extending that dot now. Shadow Word Pain's damage is going to be flatline increased. However, Divine Procession now prioritizes the lowest I'm sorry, I was getting ahead of myself, but Divine Procession is now going to prioritize the lowest duration atonement, which is an amazing change. This is when you smite spam, every smite is extending an atonement by 2 seconds, I believe, and it would be so frustrating when you have 5 atonements. One of them is just a shorter duration. You just watch it slowly tick down as your smites extend all the long duration ones. So this is going to just eliminate a pain point from the class and make it more predictable to play instead of RNG based. I love this change. I wish they'd do more stuff kind of like this. Expiation. This is what I thought we were getting to next. It no longer increases the damage of Shadow Word Death and Mind Blast instead of just like a flat modifier. It instead now deals damage equal to 200% of the duration of the dot that you take. So this is just going to scale a lot better, and this is also going to double dip into the Shadow Word Pain damage increase that I just mentioned that I thought we were skipping down here. And then I think those are going to pan out, and I think those are 2 changes that are going to be for the health and the longevity of the spec. I don't think, I honestly don't think anyone's going to miss how they worked before, if I'm being honest. Now, next up, they have a lot of changes coming to Penance here, which I actually really appreciate this. If you play Disc Priest in current retail, there are so many steps that you have to take to get the max value from your penance. Whereas now they're going to try to reduce that and put more power into baseline penance. And then you can still amplify it. You just have to take less steps to get there. And that's what these next few changes are going to be. So Harsh Discipline now only increases the number of penance bolts by 1 per talent point instead of 2. The buff is going to continue to stack up to 2 times, but will now represent charges instead of increasing the number of bolts per stack. So you can still get 2 stacks. It's just going to consume 1 and shoot 1 more bolt each time. I like this a lot. It's not going to be, it's just not going to be as bursty. and how you can get those buffs or modify your penance. But still, it's going to work out because they are buffing penance. Let me get there. So, Power of the Dark Side increase the damage and healing of penance by 30% instead of 50%. That's a nerf. That is a nerf. They're taking power from one of the ways that you can modify your penance. However, trust me, it's going to work out. But let me get there. The cooldown of penance is now going to be reduced by haste. This is amazing. If you've ever played Mistweaver Monk, the more haste we have, the lower the cooldown or something like a Rising Sun kick is. That is incredible. You're already pushing your haste so high. This is just another reason to, but also another strength that you're getting, another bonus that you're getting for doing so. Huge change there. And then to cap it all off, to make sense of the dark side, Power of the Dark Side nerf, and the harsh discipline change, they're just buffing the damage of healing or damage and healing of penance by 50%. Huge changes, more baseline power and penance, still incentive to play well and to buff your penance before you press it. However, since it's hasted, you can press it more often. You're getting more power from it. If you don't, use these other methods to buff it, but you're still incentivized to do so, you still can. There's still skill ceiling. It's just that the skill floor is kind of being raised a bit, if I'm being honest, on Disc Priest, which is always welcome on a spec as difficult as Disc Priest. Moving on to Holy Priest. Holy Priest has been a buggy mess on PTR. I made a video on Holy Priest, and you guys very quickly and rightfully pointed out that it was bugged. Trail of Light was bugged. It was just healing everyone instead of the previous target you healed or flash healed. So it's just a buggy, unbalanced mess. But I think the bugs were kind of necessary for you to push the same keys as everyone else because of how the Prayer of Healing changes did not really land on their feet very well. There were so many steps that you had to take in order to buff your Prayer of Healing to the max, and that is what it looks like they're changing coming into this week's. And I am actually very excited for some of these changes. I'm kind of annoyed by one of them. You guys might know which one. But let's start off. Lightweaver now increases the healing of heal and Prayer of Healing by 18% instead of 25%. This is a nerf to Lightweaver for sure, but they're trying to do the same thing that they did for the Disc Priest, where they're baking more of that power into the baseline of something like Prayer of Healing, which just makes it make more sense to press in your base rotation without having to buff it with Lightweaver first. I like this. Let's just move on. Trail of Light now only replicates 25% of the healing done to the previous target instead of 35%. This is just, I'm pretty sure this is just a revert to the buff that they gave Trail of Light, which I am a huge Trail of Light believer. I love this talent. One of my favorite talents in the entire game. I kind of wish that it wasn't getting nerfed, but it is very strong. I guess we're just gonna have to see how it plays out. You never get a read on Holy Priest tuning until you actually see it. So let's just move on to the next one. Dispersing Light now replicates 5% of the healing done to 4 injured allies instead of 6. So just nerfing that AoE healing capability a little bit. And then Prayer of Healing, baseline healing is increased by 20%. So it's an overall buff to your Prayer of Healing. You're just getting reduced effectiveness from your Lightweaver and from your Trail of Light. And then finally, Eternal Sanctity now extends the duration of Apotheosis by 1 second instead of 1.5. This is going to reduce how long you can extend your Apotheosis, which was kind of getting insane with how long you could extend it given enough haste, or if you push like max haste, you could extend it pretty long, which this is just going to be, honestly, it's a nice balancing change. It's nice that they're doing it now and not after everyone re-rolled their Holy Priest. Let's just leave it there. I know nerfs are never good or welcome, but at least we can rejoice they're doing it now. And then moving on to Shaman. Shaman is kind of sneaking under the radar. They aren't getting like super crazy changes, but they're getting some that I'm actually a fan of. So Resto Shaman. Master of the Elements is now going to last 30 seconds instead of 15 seconds. You just have more time to consume that buff. That's nice. It's quality of life. I don't know if that was a major pain point for most Resto Shamans. I never noticed it, but I'm sure people like Shamrock, to the big Shaman pushers, knew that it needed to get more of a duration. So I think this is going to work. Or I think one of the reasons why they wanted this change might have to do with like Totemic and how Surging Totem is a longer cooldown than Healing Rain, I'm guessing. Maybe something like that, but I guess this just gives you more of an option of how to use your Master of Elements. And then Farseer is seeing some changes. I think they're going to net positive, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So all ancestor healing now benefits from your mastery. So the lower people's health bars are when you heal them, the more you're going to do healing. So now your mastery is going to affect the ancestor healing. The problem here is currently shamans, as far as I know, they don't push their mastery too hard unless they're like turbo progging some big things that are like taking you down to 10% health or something. As far as I know, their mastery is kind of lower. It just historically has been lower on their priority list. So it's going to be interesting to see how this adjusts their stat weights. I don't think it's going to make too much of a dent unless mastery is already pretty solid in their stat weights. But I like this. However, they're kind of counterbalancing that. Your ancestor healing across the board is going to be reduced by 15%. However, you're going to see more healing when people are low. I guess depending on how much it benefits from their mastery is just going to have to see if this is a buff or a net decrease. So I don't know. Big question marks here. I still want to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Now your ancestors are going to cast Healing Wave when you cast Healing Wave. And then they kind of just, I don't know if they needed to say this, but it's just like, hey, by the way, Healing Wave heals for slightly more than Healing Surge. No, but I guess they were casting Healing Surge before, so it's just like, hey, they're going to cast a stronger spell. You'll like it, trust me. So I like that. Whispering Waves now also duplicates Healing Wave healing done by ancestors. I don't know how much extra healing that's going to equate to, but I could imagine it's going to equate to quite a bit. And it's also going to incentivize you to cast Healing Wave more while you have your ancestors active. Or if you do like little mini ancestors ramps, you can just get more value if you cast Healing Wave. Pretty cool. Maelstrom Supremacy now increases the healing of Healing Wave, Healing Surge, Wellspring, Downpour, and Chain Heal. That is a lot of stuff to modify with one talent. It's going to modify them by 15%, which was 8%. That's a pretty giant buff. And speaking of buffs, Elemental Reverb now increases Riptide's healing by 10%, was 5%. So two kind of snuck, like they snuck these in. They're kind of at the bottom of their buffs. I don't really know how much this is going to affect their overall like output, but it's looking like it's going to be a pretty sizable buff to some pretty important spells. Riptide and Chain Heal, pretty big stuff. So all in all, I'm pretty excited for this list of changes. I think we have a lot of stuff that's going to shake things up a bit within classes, but not shake the macro up. It's not going to change healing forever, which I like. I welcome changes like this. I welcome weeks like this where they're like, hey, let's tweak some numbers. Let's make things more fun. Let's fix what was broken. I am a huge fan of weeks like this. What do you guys think of these changes? Which one are you most excited to try out? Or which one are you just thinking like they did not need to do that? They didn't need to nerf this spell or nerf this talent. Let me know that in the comments below. Thank you so much for all the support. While I try to get all these PTR videos out to you guys, it's I don't know if you can tell, my eyes are just blood red because I'm so tired trying to just edit and make a lot of videos for you guys. Like finishing my series is taking so long. But guys, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.